Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the My Bourbon Journey Whiskey Review channel and tonight's Blind Sample Whiskey Smackdown. I am very excited for my special guest tonight, Matt Rehwoldt. You also may know him as Aiden English, the WWE Wrestling superstar. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on. I've been looking forward to this for a couple of weeks and trying out something new, meeting new people. That's one of the best parts about this whole thing.
Absolutely. So before we get into a little bit more about you, I'll let everybody kind of know what we're going to be doing tonight. So essentially, I sent Matt 4 samples of some different things. He's going to be tasting the samples that I sent blind. I'll be tasting along with him just to kind of go through so I remember exactly what it was I sent him and some of the profiles. And then he's going to rank them basically from the one he likes the most to the one he likes the least. So that's kind of what we'll do tonight. So before we kind of get into the tasting, Matt, do you mind kind of sharing a little bit about yourself and your career with everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. No, so I was a young kid who liked wrestling like a lot of people of kind of my generation. Fell in love with it as a young person, and I just happened to be one of the few who never grew out of it. And so I kind of just vehemently went after it, and moved when I was right fresh out of college. I moved to Florida and lived in a stranger's home while I paid to train to wrestle with some of the people from WWE at the time who were offering a class down there in Tampa. And I just worked hard. I made a really good impression on the trainer there. Thankfully, he's an awesome guy named Norman Smiley, and I came back home and he put in a good word for me. Didn't promise me anything, but just passed on a good word, and they took a chance on me, and that was back in late 2011, early 2012, and yeah, they took a chance and gave me a shot, and I've been with them ever since. Going through Florida, their developmental system, which has turned into WWE's kind of third arm called NXT, which is where kind of all the young new talent come through before coming up to WWE, which is where I moved to a couple of years ago. And then just been riding the road, riding the high ever since. It's really, really something else to be able to throw on a pair of spandex and go around the world fighting people.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I know I've listened to a couple of the podcasts and stuff, and I admire the athleticism and what you guys really have to do and put into it and all the travel, like we were talking kind of before we went live. It is. I mean, it is a grueling body, full body everything. I mean, it's incredible to watch what you guys do, and then see all of that in the background, what you're doing to prepare for what you're doing in the ring.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing, and that's what I love about right now. And I briefly mentioned it on Bourbon Pursuit. Is just that I think the cool thing is I think we're getting to a point in entertainment / like wrestling history where people are really coming to that realization. Because for a while there, without belaboring the point, there's wrestling's fake thing, right? But I think people have gotten over that. We're at a point where, yeah, we know it's a show, but you know what? It's very athletic. It's more athletic than it's ever been, and so I think people have a lot of respect for what we do, and it's really grown in that department, and so it's becoming kind of an art form of its own.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess here's the main question. One of the things I really wanted to ask was, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, but what was it about whiskey, and what was it that kind of led you down the rabbit hole, so to speak, that it seems like you're kind of on at this point?
Yeah, 100% deep in the rabbit hole. I ain't getting out now. I don't know, man. It's like one of those things. So I'm an Irish kid. So my dad always grew up drinking Scotch and Irish whiskey, and like my grandparents, it was always a shot of Jameson and a beer. There was at all my uncles, everybody had it at every meal, all that stuff. I never really liked Irish whiskey, but when I was in college and then of drinking age and everything, when people would just go out to the bars, I would do a shot of Jameson and a beer, and I would, you know, do that. And I would, of course, force it down because I didn't care what it tasted like. But I would see people like my grandfather and my father sipping a scotch, sipping with him. And after a while, I think probably this happened briefly, probably about a year or so after I moved to Florida to work with NXT. I was in my apartment. I was on my own, like truly on my own. I was out of Chicago. I was out of everywhere for the first time in my life, and just kind of really looking to develop myself as a human. And remembering that about my dad, I was getting in a little bit into cocktail culture. So I thought that was very cool. But then there was just something like more grounded and, for lack of a better term, like mature and grown up about someone taking the time, sitting there, unadulterated, you know, no sugar waters, sodas, no mixers, and just sipping on a spirit. And I thought that was very, like I said, very mature, very sophisticated, just kind of a grown up thing to do. And outside of what all my friends were doing, which was shooting and a beer and Irish car bombs and all these wild concoctions that the South Howard, Tampa district were doing. So I made it a goal. I'm like, all right, I want to learn to do this because I know it's going to take time. It's not going to come. You're not just going to like wake up one day and like it because you turned 30 or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I went to Borders and was looking in just like cooking and spirit section and everything. And I said it before, I'm 99% sure it was Lou Bryson's tasting whiskey book. And that's what he said. And he was just like, you just need to sit down with it and sip it a little bit every day. Because, you know, at first it's going to be all burn, it's going to be all fire, and it's just going to be like hard to tolerate. But so I said it on the episode 2. I sat on my couch with a Coke Zero in one hand and whiskey in the other, and chased it less and less until I didn't need to chase it anymore, and until I could do it. And then even then, it was like, all right, I can do this. But I wasn't tasting almond or vanilla or caramels or cherries or, you know, dark fruits or any of that stuff. That still took. I only really starting to actually taste things. God, probably 6-7 months ago, really, or maybe more, maybe about a year ago at this point. Was when the kind of brain awoke and was like, aha. And that's when I started really getting into it. I think that was probably briefly before I met, I was lucky enough to meet Fred Minnick. And then talking to him and reading his books and everything really turned me on to all the different flavor components. And not only that, but how those come about because of the process of how it's made. And again, rabbit hole, so on.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, all of the different profiles, you know, just the amount of different flavors there are. I mean, out there to try to pull some, you know, and we all listen and see all of the people, you know, talk about what they taste and what they smell. And sometimes you just wonder, like, where in the world, like, if you get a hold of that and you smell it and taste it, where in the world did they get that from, or how, or why? And I think that just all comes just through time and through sensory and a lot of that. So, I mean, it is a really, really interesting, you know, thing just to kind of hear and see what people like and why. So this is why putting together a little bit of a panel like this, just to kind of test you and see what it is you like and why and all of that. So I guess before we get into that, one other quick thing. Do you remember, going back to what you said before, do you remember the first, like, I guess I'll say whiskey, maybe bourbon specifically, but what whiskey it was that got you to the point where you thought, I can now sip on this and I don't need, you know, to Coke in one hand and a little bit of whiskey in the other?
So the bottle I started with was a Knob Creek single barrel.
Huh.
And literally the reason I grabbed it is because it was 120 proof. And I figured, like, by the end of this, if I can handle this, I can probably handle most anything else.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. That's a very ambitious place to start. 120 proof too.
I wasn't messing around.
No.
I wanted to do that, but so that was the first one that I was able to do because I sat there and I did sit there. But as weird as it sounds, the first one that really showed me that you can taste different things other than alcohol and fire was, I think, right before I moved back. I was up here visiting, and we had Benny's here in Chicago, and they had a single barrel pick of Old Forester had just come in. So I picked up a bottle because I was learning about store picks, and so I tried that, and that's where I really tasted cherry, and it just jumped out of the nose, it just jumped out of my mouth, and I was like, whoa, that's the first time I've tasted that in anything. And so that I kept sipping that, and from there it just started growing.
Yeah, it is. It's really crazy. I was just going through a little bit of the chat. I'll see who's in here. One of the guys asked if there's any chance you can move a little bit closer to the mic just so they can hear you maybe a little bit better.
Try. My mic is so. I need that. This is one thing I do. I need to ultimately get better equipment for this, but I've just started.
There we go. That was pretty good right there. Yeah, that's better. All right. So let's see who we've got in the chat. We'll see if there's any quick questions. So. All right, so a couple guys. Dan Trout, hey buddy. Mash and Drum, Jason. Go Habs, how's it going? Chris, Bourbon Sane, thanks for jumping in. Appreciate it, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Who we got else? Mark Brown, hey Mark, how's it going? Whiskey Ace, how's it going? All right, so why don't we, if you're ready, why don't we start kind of going through a couple of these, and we'll see what it is you like. So obviously I've got them labeled on your end,
yep.
A, B, C, D, and we can kind of go in that order. And then I thought what we'll do is we'll just kind of go through all of them. And if you want to either take mental note or whatever you want to do, at the end, we'll just do a ranking. We'll just do, we'll go least first, the whatever one you like the least first. And we'll kind of go that way. And of course, I can't let you drink alone, so I'll be drinking along with you. So
beautiful.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and we'll kind of get into it. So we'll start with A if you're ready to go.
Sure. So A, they're all black top label except A. You've got this blue little label, which makes
yeah. So that was the only one. That was one that I probably had a sample with at one point. I crossed out. It was probably D. So
okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I thought it was maybe a weird clue or something.
No, that was just a sticker that I didn't take off there. And fortunately, I know what it is on my end, and you don't. So this will be really fun to see.
Right.
And just so you do know, a little bit ahead, they are all relatively high proof bourbons. So
okay.
just so you know that.
All right, no, I'm good with that. All right, this one's one of the darker ones. Ooh. Mm-hmm. Oh, I recognize that, I think. I'm not making guesses until the end, or anything. Is that right? Or are we just
you can say and do whatever you want.
For me. I might just be talking here, but but don't.
Yeah, I won't tell you. I'll let you talk yourself into it and out of it and into it, all that kind of stuff.
Right. So because right off the bat, and it's only because I've been getting into these lately, and if I'm wrong, I'll look like a fool, but I don't care because I really do like this. This makes me think it's a Knob Creek single barrel, maybe a store pick or something. It's got the depth in it. It's not super light, which I like, and everything. It's got that beam nuttiness. Seemingly, I'm going off of assumption here. Deep caramels and vanilla.
Yeah, and on my end, just kind of moving it around the glass, it's got some really great legs, sticks and clings to the glass, really nice. Yeah, it does. It's got an absolutely fantastic nose to it.
Mm-hmm. more deep, deep caramels, a little bit of leather in there. Really nice spice, like rye and baking spices. Tingle as soon as it hits the tongue, middle palate there, and just a little bit like if I can leave my nose in there for the sip, there's a little bit of like almost like Granny Smith apple on there.
It's one of those whiskeys for me that just really kind of like develops. It's, you know, without telling you, of course, it's always been one of those whiskeys with just lots of layers, and as you go through it, there'll be lots of different things you'll probably see that kind of come in waves. For me anyway.
I'm just getting a wave of almond on the finish, kind of coating the mouth and everything, which is nice. And then slow moving finish. Yeah, this really reminds me of a little knob store pick or a single barrel, which those are some of my favorite. I feel like I'm going to become the Rare Bird 101 of Knob Creek picks and bean stuff like that. But yeah, you can't. That's one of those things you really can't go wrong for the most part with a good Knob Creek, you know, single barrel store pick, whatever. I mean, it is just an absolutely fantastic pour. And it's this is very substantial, like viscosity mouthfeel, which is something I find I'm a really big fan of. And like you look at the legs, it kind of clings to the inside of your mouth and everything like that. It really there's a really density to it that's very, very enjoyable.
Yeah, it is. I've got to say real quick, we got my very first what's called a super chat from Jason the Mash and Drums. So I appreciate that very much. He knows. So this is the first time through the channel I've gotten any super chats. So Jason, thanks again, buddy. I appreciate it. So that one probably so far ranks number one for you, hey?
Of the ones I've had, that one's the best. Yeah, but we're about to get some stiff competition, I feel.
Yeah, it's really gonna. These will test you. That's for sure.
You know what? So one of the best parts about this too is like I didn't, like I said, I'll have my wife or somebody pour them for me. I've had ones where I knock it, I guess them, I know exactly what they are, I know what bottle they are, and I feel so great. And then I'll do one the next week and literally get every one of them wrong. But I never feel bad. Like you never feel like, oh, I'm an idiot or something. You're just like, oh, that was Buffalo Trace. Holy crap, it's fun.
It's so like sensory. It's exactly that. And I think we so badly want to be so right about what we're picking that we convince ourselves. I mean, we'll go through just about, you know, every bourbon there is thinking it's that. Well, it's Beam, now it's Heaven Hill, now it's, you know, Buffalo Trace, and it's so sensory that's the best part, is it takes you on this journey that's just kind of so fun. And really, there is no right or wrong. I mean, it's just, you know, hey, you know.
Absolutely. So we got letter B.
All right, so we're on to B.
We are on to B. Hold to the light here. That one's got a really nice color too, actually, to it.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay. I see you, Steve. All right. So that's a little bit more.
I get like a lot of like, you know, really heavy like vanillas and caramels, and even like the dark fruit really starts to kind of come out with this.
I mean, again, it's a little bit more like A was very robust and kind of in your face. This is a little bit more just as like heavy, but a little bit more subtle.
Yeah.
I get some leather on the nose.
Yeah, I definitely get some leather, and I even get with this, I always got a little bit of a kind of like a buttery characteristic to it, like a creamy butter kind of to it.
Yeah, I get.
You know, like it was one of those ones that smelled creamy to me.
Okay. Mm. Ooh. There's something in there that's really sticking out, but like I can't identify it. It's really like on the like the undertones of it all the other, like the other bourbon, traditional bourbon combinations of the caramels and vanillas. There's something that like makes my tongue water. That's really, really interesting.
Do you get like maybe a bit of a like cherry Coke flavor at all?
Yeah. That's almost it. Like, yeah, like it almost reminds me of like, yeah, like almost cherry vanilla Coke.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I can almost. So I've been trying to, excuse me, venture a little bit into scotches lately, just to kind of expand. I don't want to. I don't want to just be just bourbon. And I almost can taste like a hint of the malted barley on this one, or yeah, of the just right on the finish, just right at the end of it, a little bit of that barley taste.
Yeah, it was it's another one of these whiskeys that are just, there's so much stuff kind of going on. You're constantly trying to figure out like what that is. And
Yeah.
For me, that's always been from a whiskey standpoint, something that I enjoy, where you're constantly trying to like figure it out, or there's just another wave of a flavor.
Well, and I love too that coming like, hell, I might come back, I'll bottle excuse me, twist these caps back on. I'll come back to all four of these in maybe a month, and they might taste different. Or like,
Absolutely.
To me anyway, like they won't necessarily change, but I'm tasting different stuff now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I love, is like it just, you as a human, as an organism,
Yeah.
develop. You know what I mean?
Yeah. While we're doing this, do you want to share with everybody who's watching a little bit about your kind of whiskey channel that you have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. So, just as I fell in love with this whole hobby and everything, I did what a lot of people do. I jump on Instagram and YouTube and stuff like that, but because I got that into it that I wanted to share it, and I found that there were so many people doing that already. And that's what had gotten me into it. Is that there's like a huge niche community to it, and like I tell everybody, well, listen, and I've bored a lot of people to death, but like I feel we're in this like age of the niche, where before all these people were in like small groups, kind of outsiders, just little private clubs, all this stuff nobody knew. But thanks to the internet, which is good and bad and all its craziness, but like it's given everyone a chance to connect, and everything that used to be like small or like underground is now like connected. And so there's these communities that you'd never hear about, and that I say, it started with your Trekkies and your comic book fans and everything, and now, the San Diego Comic Con is one of the biggest things in the world, and it's all quote unquote comic book nerds. But now we have whiskey expos, and there's conventions and things. Wrestling has it too. Like wrestling fans have these things, and it's the era of fandom, and like you don't have to hide in your basement and talk to your two friends. There's huge communities out there for everyone to be sharing pictures and videos and likes and dislikes and everything like that. It's very, very cool. And so that's why I wanted to start my Wrestling with Whiskey Instagram and my YouTube page, where I do taste. I don't like to call them reviews because I am still learning and everything like that. It's tasting. It's my thoughts. And in fact, it's primarily aimed at people who are new, so that it's like we can kind of maybe learn together. And I highlighted every episode, hey, I don't know everything. I'm not writing this to give it a point value. I'm new to this. I hope you're new to this. And I hope we can both learn and figure out some of the same things together as we go along. And I think take some of the stigma of it. You don't have to be a sommelier or something to jump into this and enjoy it. That's one of my big take homes.
Yeah, you know, and for me, that's kind of a bit of like when I first started out with things before I ever even got into doing reviews. For me, it was a lot of that. It was more of a video diary and just kind of like talking your way through things, and then it just kind of led down the road of like, well, after you kind of start to develop a little bit more of a palate and understand, you know, it got to more of the reviews. But for me, it was a bit of the same, where I kind of had a passion for you know, whiskey in general, and it was just kind of fun to kind of talk what you were thinking, you know, say to a camera or a phone or whatever it was, and document all of that, and to be able to go back and, you know, check all that stuff out. It was a really kind of fun process, and I've watched a lot of, you know, your videos, and it's fun. It's very, you know, interactive, and you know, you let everybody know, hey, I'm not a professional. I'm just telling you this is what I smell and I taste, and you know, and all of that. So I mean, I give you a lot of credit for doing something like that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's just everybody can get into it. In fact, I've got one of my buddies from WWE. He's Greg Hamilton. He's one of our announcers, and he's a really great guy. He just moved home he was living in Florida, but he just moved home to Cincinnati, and so he's kind of just north of Bourbon country there. So he's really getting into it. He's actually the one who helped me set up. We're doing my first ever barrel pick next month with New Riff, and we got a group of guys together in conjunction with the store, and we're gonna go pick out a barrel of New Riff, and I think we're gonna call it Wrestling with Whiskey. So it'll be
that would be awesome. I mean, that's, you know, again, it's a lot of, you know, doing this. You know, it's not knowing any of the details of what it is you're tasting, and you're just, you know, picking something off of sensory, what you like, what you taste, and that's the best way to do it. You know, it really is.
100%.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
Letter C.
All right. Let's see who else we got in here. So, Richie Z, hey, how's it going, buddy? Thanks for jumping in. Scott, Scotch Test Dummies. Eric Waite, thanks for popping in. I appreciate it. Most Chun. Chris, Santa Cruz, and how's it going? Thank you, gentlemen. All right, so you're still on B, hey?
No. I just.
Oh, you're on C. Okay.
Right off the bat on that, but see, it's crazy. So right off the bat, I almost got like candy. It was like super sweet. the initial, but then I just keep going back to it, and it dulls down a little bit, and now I'm getting more into like a little bit of nuttiness, like a little, just like a tiny bit of banana almost, but there's still that overlying sweetness to it.
Yeah, that was one of the things I always got was right away, like you had mentioned before, like a candy sweetness to this one. So
now I'm getting a lot of almonds as I keep going back to it. Ooh, that's got a nice hug to it. Nice little hug. Yeah, I get a really almost like almondy walnut from that one. Nice really deep caramel on that one.
Yeah, it's definitely a different profile going. You know, this was one of the things that I kind of struggle with, was trying to figure out what order to go in, because they're all so different ultimately.
Yep.
To try to figure out like what order am I going to put these in, that one thing doesn't dominate another or interfere with another. But sure. I mean, I think in a way it's difficult to not interfere because we're tasting them so quickly and all of that. But yeah, it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, so Eric Waite, super chat. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I will send you a coin for sure. I'll send you 2 coins. How's that? I really appreciate that. I don't have a drum set or anything like some of the other guys do.
Drum set.
So sometimes when the super chats come through, which is just like a channel donation type of thing, when people get the super chat, there's a couple people have got some things. One of them, Jason from the Mash and Drum, is a drummer. So when people come, he's got little thing. He kind of gives them like the old gongaroo type of deal.
Yeah.
So I've got to come up with something, I guess. So I did have one question, and I don't know if this was a joke or not, but it was directed towards you. And this was from Dan Trout. He asked me to ask you what it was like to wrestle against Goldust.
Goldust?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a random question. That's fun. Goldust he's the man. He's one of those guys. He's perennial, and I give him so much credit. Especially so I wrestled him the last time. He's taken some time off, but the last time I wrestled him was probably in either late 2016 or early 2017. And man, he's been around close to 30 years, but in some ways he moves now better than he did in the early 90s. Just when he was bigger and carrying a lot more weight and stuff on him. But he is a really, really, really good guy, down to earth. And wrestling him, he's, for a man his age, way too fast. Way too fast. He should not have been as fast and hard to catch as he was. But that's the thing. He keeps up with all these young guys. When he goes, he can go. So it was really awesome.
So I guess to kind of piggyback off of that, I guess and maybe I don't know if this is a fair question or not, but is there a wrestler, I guess now or even in the past, that you really enjoyed like wrestling with? You just kind of you got each other for the most part.
Oh yeah, I mean, you get, like with anything, like with any kind of performance or any kind of, honestly, any kind of relationship, there's chemistry, and that works with us too. I had really, really, really good chemistry with a guy named Ty Dillinger, who just left the company actually, but he's another great guy, and I have had really, really good matches with him. And then honestly, there's a guy named Chad Gable, who was another tag team wrestler. He's awesome, and me and him always kind of clicked on a certain level. And then we didn't wrestle each other a whole lot, but kind of as a unit, like the whole Rusev thing, like, man, like that was just a thing that was thrown together. It wasn't supposed to be anything, and we just turned it into this whole thing, and like we got along and we had fun with it, and we just had a great time being together, working together, and all that stuff. So again, that was just one of those chemistries that is kind of inexplicable.
Is there somebody that you've never wrestled against that you always kind of wished you had a chance to wrestle with?
Oh, I mean, there's tons. So I got to wrestle. I mean, I've gotten to wrestle. Man, I've been really lucky. I've gotten to wrestle almost everybody on the main roster. I even got to interact with the Undertaker, which is crazy because who knows how long more he's going to do at all. I didn't get to wrestle him directly, but I was part of a match with him and Rusev, and just that interaction was incredible. I would have loved to kind of wrestle, some of the guys who've come and gone already, like a match with Triple H, would have been great. Obviously, Shawn Michaels, your legends. But there's there's a lot of these guys on NXT or 205 Live who I think are really underrated, or people don't talk about quite enough, but they're so talented, and I'd love to have a chance to wrestle any of those guys.
Yeah, and I know your father-in-law would have been a fantastic guy to have wrestled with. The athleticism that he displayed was, you could tell he was just one of those elite type of kind of just athletes. He probably would have been good at whatever he did.
100%. I mean, you talk to anybody in our business, and almost to a person, they'll say he's on the top 3, if not the number 1 he was a wrestler's wrestler. You know, he was so many fans' favorites too. Obviously, he will live on forever. And but even more so, he was a wrestler's wrestler. Everybody loved to work with him as well. That was that, and that's like the ultimate sign of respect and appreciation.
Yeah. So what are you thinking of C? What are you thinking with this?
There's a really nice almond note on the palate in this. I don't know how I'm going to rank these. They're all good. That's the problem. Like, it's going to be like least really good to most really good.
Well, and that's the thing. It'll be one that would be, the way I always look at these are, like you just said, sometimes it's not always a matter of, I don't like one of them. Just I prefer. Yeah, exactly. I prefer one over the other. So
100%. That one's good. I'm gonna go back. When we go back, I'm gonna do it with a very small pour.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You may have to go back to these, a couple times and just see, that's the one thing I always thought was interesting about this was going through something and then going back and then either like specifically nosing it, and you start to pick up just so many different things as you go through something. So
yeah, 100%. But C was definitely like the softest, as weird as it sounds. Something I like to talking like, I don't know, in terms of like feel, because like there's the A and B were very deep, very full bodied. C was a little bit lighter, a little bit softer, and again had a really strong like almond undertone to it, and then like this nice like middle palate, spicy hug to it, which was very nice.
Yeah, I think that's a good description of C.
Very curious what they are. All right, I'm gonna pour D.
And before I sent you these samples, these bottles had all been open for, I would say a good amount of time to let a little bit of air get to them before. Okay. So there's nothing here that's a fresh crack or anything like that. So
gotcha. No, that's about the same. Okay. Let's get some eyes on D here.
Yeah, they all have good color. That's one thing for the most part. I mean, C probably in comparison to all of them is probably a little lighter, but they all have nice good color to them.
Yes, so. They do. Ooh. That so far is probably the most unique nose. Again, it's very full body. There's depth there, but it's not in your face. It's kind of subtle. It's not super hot. There's like no alcohol burn on the nose, which I like, which is tough because like usually when I get my nose deep in there and really take it in, it's like, oh, you got to kick back because especially if it's over 100 proof or anything. This is whether it's the air that's mellowed it or just the drink itself.
Yeah, and for me, like you said before, I think this was one of those whiskeys for me that as it got a little bit of air, it just kind of got better. It started to kind of really round out a little bit more. So.
I get a little bit of cocoa from this one. A little bit of chocolate. Some nuts and a little bit of dark fruit on there.
Yeah, for me, that was one of the things I got. I got a lot of, like, right away, like a lot of complexity. It was one of those, you could tell it was just something about it.
100%. And that's what I like too, is like, it frustrates me, but I almost enjoy when I can't like put it into words I can't identify it.
Yeah.
To me, that means it's complex. And so, like, when I pick up something that's kind of young and like very traditional bourbon, it's fine, but it's like, oh, okay, it's vanilla, caramel, and a little bit like that. That's it. It's
exactly.
It's regular bourbon, and that's awesome. But then when you get some of those special bottles or barrels and older ages, where you're like, shit, pardon me, I don't know.
Well, and I mean that's the thing. I mean, like behind you, I mean, you've got the Stags and you've got the Handies and you've got like some Parkers. I mean, you've got some whiskeys that are there that are, I mean, deep whiskeys that are, I mean, really ones that you can kind of just get into and take your time with, you know.
100%. That's very enveloping. Very from the mouth to the tongue down the back of the throat.
Yeah.
Nice finish on that.
It was for me one of those whiskeys when I watched who's actually in the chat tonight, Jason from the Mash and Drum. He did a review of it, and just based on what he described, it was one of those things that you kind of locked into where, like, that sounds like something really incredible, and I want that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
so.
100%.
Yeah, and for anybody who hasn't subscribed to Matt's channel, again, that's Wrestling with Whiskey. Go ahead and make sure you subscribe and follow along with everything he's doing out there. He's doing some pretty awesome things. So
yeah, and I'll be actually trying out something from somewhere near you. Have you heard of Dancing Goat?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I saw through your Instagram stuff that you did some stuff. So yeah, Dancing Goat, they produce a really fantastic rye whiskey.
Yeah, they sent me a thing, and I want to try it out. And so that'll be my next, for anybody who's interested. That'll probably be my next video.
Yeah.
On the YouTube channel. And it's one of those things. It's cool. I'll be honest, that's like the first distillery who has sent me a sample of something to try, and I appreciate that. And it sounds very interesting. The Solara aging and all that.
It is. They really they're very kind of in tune with very like modern day kind of techniques. I mean, not that that's modern day by any means, but just in terms of being very, I guess, a little bit outside the box and how they want to produce their whiskey. And yeah, Travis and those guys over there, they're doing some really fantastic things. So I think you'll enjoy it.
Awesome. I'm enjoying this right now.
Yeah, it's one that I really enjoy as well. And it was after I had kind of listened to the review that Jason from the Mash and Drum did, just the how he described it, and then once I got it and was able to kind of taste it, and I always try to not judge something based on just kind of a fresh crack. I always like to give it at least a week or two to get a good idea of maybe what this is going to be about. So
yes.
I kind of did that. I actually opened it and didn't do anything with it for 2 weeks, which was the hardest thing I could probably do. But I did. I let it just kind of open up a little bit. And the first time I had it, well, I really enjoyed all the kind of full flavor that it has.
Yeah. And I love that you said that, because I actually just had experience with this recently. And somebody else had asked me about it. So I did a video on the 1910 from Old Forester. And if you go back to that video, and I did myself, I'm really overtaken by the char of that second barrel, the finish that they did, that heavily charred barrel. And you could tell if you watch it, like, I didn't hate it, but it was more like, this is interesting. I didn't know how I felt about it. It was just, to me, it was a char bomb. That was a fresh crack, to be fair. I literally opened it on air and poured it, and it was charry. It was leathery. It was a lot of those are spice, char, leather. That like tobacco almost. It was very heavy in those kind of dry flavors, and so I was like, this is interesting. But literally, so I've had it since, but I went back to it for the first time in a while, like a month ago. So probably been open about 4 months. Oh man, it was pure Luxardo cherry.
Yeah.
Sweet. It was, there was still that dark kind of leatheriness, but it was like plum and Luxardo cherry and like sweetness, and like it totally changed.
Yeah.
In the couple of months it was open. So it happens all the time.
It does. It does. I mean, for me, I guess my experience with most whiskeys are the more that they're open. I mean, I would say, when you start getting something that's open for, a month, let's say, I think at that point, you're really starting to taste like what that whiskey is really going to be like.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. That's the thing where a lot of times people will open up a bottle and they don't like it, and they go back to it later on, like you were just describing, and it does. I mean, 2, 3, 4 months, it's a completely different whiskey. So
100%.
Yeah.
Ooh. All right, I'm gonna fill these all with a little bit more of each one, so I can kind of do one last little kind of like speed back to back. Just to remind myself, remind my palate kind of where we've been. Not to do a cheesy plug, but the bourbon journey that I've been on tonight,
Thanks for the shameless plug. I appreciate that.
Hell yeah, absolutely. But I will. So I'm going to talk to the bourbons for a second here. Ladies, gents, whatever gender you happen to be, you've all done wonderful tonight. There are no losers here, kids. There are no losers. You're all winners because I got to drink you. So
well, and that's the thing. I mean, there are whiskeys that, I mean, for you and I and everybody else, just does not work for us. There's just something 100%. About things that that doesn't work for my palate or whatever. And that's the best part. Like we were talking before about testing what it is you like. I mean, you have no idea what any of this is, whether you like it or not. It's subjective. It's completely up to you.
I literally, I had just done a video, my most recent, on one of the new Willet single barrels of their own distillery. And I thought it was fine. I thought it was okay. It was pretty standard bourbon flavor. Nothing special. Like nothing really jumped out. But then somebody commented and they were like, "Man, that's one of my favorites. I love that stuff. Like I thought their stuff was so good." And I'm like, and I felt bad because he messaged me later and was like, "I hope that wasn't rude to say that." And I go, "No." I'm like, "Man, that's awesome." I'm like, "What hits for me is going to be different for you, and what is great for you, I might not." It's like that's what this whole thing is about.
That's exactly it. Because I mean, anybody. I mean, you may love something, I may not like it, and you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you like what you like, and that whether it's $10 or $200, it makes no difference. You like what you like, you drink it how you like it, and that's it. I mean, and the best part about like what we're doing here is whiskey to me does what we're doing. You can share conversation and you can talk through things and figure stuff out. I mean, that's the kind of the best part about it, really for me, is all the interaction part of it. So
100%. And that's what's cool about this. And living, in 2019, it's so cool. We've done this. This is what me and you right here is an example. We exchanged a couple emails and messages through Instagram. That was literally it before tonight. Never shared words, never shared conversation, everything. And now we've been chatting for God knows how long, and now, I got a pal in you. And
absolutely.
Like that's what's very cool.
That is. I mean, there's a lot of whiskey. I mean, it's done the same thing. A lot of other people. It kind of just brings a lot of people together for something that's a common thing that people can share. And It does. It's one of those things you can sit down. You know, you're not going to maybe chug on it. You can sit and, you know, have good conversation, and that's what it's really all about. So
absolutely.
Yeah, this is the tough part. Even going back through to try to like, even from my standpoint, I try to taste a couple of these and see which ones I prefer now.
Think.
All right, let's see what else we've got going on.
Yes, please. If there's anything else.
All right.
See, already coming back, letter B. I'm opened up a little bit or something. I don't know. I'm thinking. I tasted that little bit of that malted barley. It might be that, or I might be in such a bourbon mode that I overlooked it. But I think like B might be a rye. I feel like it might be something other than bourbon. It's got a really nice spice to it, and it's like a different twinge of flavor, like hair of floralness. So that might be a rye. I'm not gonna convince myself of that, but it's a little bit different. And but I picked up on immediately something that wasn't there the first time around.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, a lot of times, even though it's been in the little bottle for a short period of time, it does. I mean, it can start to change a little bit. And now that you've got it open in a glass, it really starts to kind of open up and all of that. So it's amazing how quickly a whiskey can change. And we haven't even discussed like whether you ever add like water or anything to your bourbon at all.
So on that front, I will start this by saying I am not a snob. I'm not the person who will tell you have to drink it neat, and if you put an ice cube in it or mix it in Coke, you're a heathen or anything. I'm not 100% not that person. But just for me, I do prefer it 100% neat. I've had a couple, especially in the last few weeks, where I've thrown in an ice cube because I'm like, okay. But even that, for some of them, felt like it diluted it too much. So time to time, if there's a water glass around, I'll order a couple just spritzes of it.
Yeah.
But overall, I like to try it neat, especially as I'm at this relatively young stage of it. I just want all the intense flavor of what you got. Let me get used to that, and let me start being able to pick that out, and then I'll start adding water as and everything.
Yeah, that was kind of my approach to the whole thing too. Was like, you know, and I do the same thing with for like when I do any type of review is I try to be, I guess, as subjective as possible. So I don't add water. I don't try to change the profile, and I don't give a score. So I let people try to make their own, you know, judgment as to, based on the profile that I've described, do you like it? And you know, that's kind of why I decided to do that early on with my channel, to not necessarily put a score, because to me, a score was very subjective. You know, my 90 could be your 80 or whatever it may be. So I just relied on, you know, kind of like what you do is you give a description of an item or of a bourbon or whatever it may be. And if that's what people like, you know, more power to you.
Right. So. And plus, so not to belabor a point, but like things, and I get why obviously magazines and media does it, but the number thing for some, that devoids everyone of conversation, because all you need to do is click. Oh, it's a 94. Okay, I'll go get it. Well, then why don't you watch and hear how it's described? And like you said, oh, I really like caramel flavors or something like that. That sounds like something I'd like. Or oh, that's that was very cherry forward. I love like dark fruits and cherries. And then you get into the conversation of it and the, you know, a little bit more of the mood of it, as opposed to just clicking, reading a number, and then running out to the store or something like that.
Yeah. Well, and that's that's
everybody more.
And that's the thing, you know, you see like specifically with like the wine industry, you know, you walk down any wine aisle and there's a score. Exactly. There's a score on every single wine. I mean, you got a wine that's $200, that's a 94, and one that's $10, that's a 93. So, I mean, what in the world does 1 point is 1 point a $150 difference? I mean, it's right. I don't know half the time.
I don't know either, and I don't bother trying to know. So, all right, I think I have a pretty good idea of an order here.
All right, I'll get my little sheet for what they are, and
I'm very curious.
Yeah, so this will be interesting to see which ones you put and why, and I'll once you give me. So why don't you give me the one that your 4th place one, let's say.
Okay, so coming from the bottom. So 4th place for me was, and forgive me, my phone just hit 10% and I can't plug it in here. So if I do die, I love you all, but I should have a few more minutes at least. But for 4th, I think it was C. So I think just because it was the least kind of rich, and I'm very much into powerful mouthfeels, very viscous, very kind of all encompassing hug. It was the most subtle, which is nice at times, but for my personal palate, C came in 4th.
Okay.
Do you want me to go through the whole thing before you?
Actually, you want me? I'll just reveal as you go through. I'll just reveal what it is. How's that? Okay. So C, your last one was the Peerless Rye single barrel,
really?
And this was specifically what they called their smoked old fashioned. It was a single barrel that you could only get at the distillery. There was aged 3 years, so this was one of their newer 3-year single barrels.
Okay, so that explains the lighter color and a little.
It is, and it's a rye whiskey. So, and it was a little bit. It was kind of the 3rd one that you tasted. So this is where I kind of struggled. But so anyway, that's fine.
I get that. Okay. Wait, is that? Yeah. So then number 3 was B.
Okay.
Yep. B was. I liked it. It just didn't. And that's why I kind of put it as very middle. I mean, A, the 2 top ones kind of definitely. I knew what those were as soon as I tasted them.
Okay, so B is the Old Carter American whiskey.
Oh, really?
And that one was 139.6 proof, aged 12 years.
Wait, that was 139?
That was nobody ever guesses that, so that's just shy of 140 proof whiskey right there.
Whoa.
And that specifically was this bottle right here.
Wow.
So
as weird as it sounds, I'm taking one more sip of that.
Yeah, and maybe that will, and you know what, it could change a little bit. It is definitely a different profile to it, and maybe it'll open up. For me, it's one that I really enjoy, and I think maybe if you go back to it a little bit later on down the road, I mean, not to try to influence you or anything, but I think some stuff will start to come out a little bit more to you in that. So, but anyway,
139.
Yeah, nobody ever guesses it. When I tasted it blind, when I tasted it blind, it was
110 or something like that.
That was exactly what I said. I said this is probably a 110, max 115, and 139.6 proof. Yeah.
Is there an age on that?
12 years.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't see that. Is that only like a Kentucky kind of area thing?
It was. Yeah. So Old Carter is a Kentucky only release.
Sourced?
Sourced. Yep. Old Carter was so Mark and Sherry Carter, who actually kind of started the Kentucky Owl brand again with Dixon Dedman. Okay. That's who this is. So.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I look forward to coming back to that. And number 2 was A, which my guess was a Knob Creek variation of some kind.
What did you think? What did you think it was?
I thought it was some kind of Knob Creek store pick or single barrel or something beamed.
Okay, so A is your second.
A is number 2, yes.
Your second favorite.
Yep.
Okay, so A is the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Batch B, 517. This was the 2017 Whiskey of the Year.
Wow. No kidding. I was convinced because like I sip on those Knob Creek single barrels and like I smelled it. I was like, oh, this is Beam. This is Knob Creek. Wow.
Yeah, and it's I would say for the price, you know, depending on where you are, it's one of those that are anywhere, you know, I mean, for let's just call it $60, $65.
Yep.
I mean, it's really an unbeatable whiskey for what it is.
Oh, 100. We did a loop of shows in Florida several months ago. They Total Wine had them on the shelf. I think it was a B518 for $49.99. I grabbed 3 of them. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a buy all day long. I mean, people want to rank them and do all that, but I don't even care. It's maybe, if not my favorite, right up there at the top.
Yeah, 100%. Like I've yet to find. I've had probably 3 or 4, at least tasted 3 or 4 batches. None of them have disappointed.
Yeah, yeah.
And then,
all right,
so that left D.
So that leaves us with D. And this might be something that you can find in your area, because I know their distribution in the Chicagoland is pretty good. So D is Barrel Dovetail.
Oh, yes, I was reading about that. That's the Dovetail.
Yep, this is the Dovetail. So this is the rum, Cabernet, and what was the other one? Oh, geez, I didn't.
Finishes on it, right?
Oh, port finish. Yeah, so it's rum, port, and cab barrel finished. And there's something about it that the TTB didn't allow them to actually put whiskey on the bottle, so they had to eliminate it. So it's just called Barrel Dovetail.
Oh, really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So
do they specify how long each of the finishes is? I couldn't remember that when I was reading about it.
They didn't say how long it was, but knowing how Barrel is and as kind of picky as they are, my guess would be that it's probably a fairly significant amount of time.
Right? Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, especially with Barrel being basically master blenders. I mean, that's what they are.
Right.
And I really enjoy like what Barrel does. And that's why I think maybe you saw it in the profile. It's just very different and unique and all of that. So
that's what it stood out to me. It was just like, that was the one that I kept. It's like sometimes I watch a movie and it's not like whatever the best movie is, but what gets me talking, what gets me thinking. And that one kept bringing me back to the glass, smell it, to taste it. Because it was one of those ones I couldn't quite identify. I was like, there's tons of different things going on here that I can't quite figure out, but I know it's layered, I know it's complex, and I know it's very, very interesting.
Well, you know, and that's the thing. A lot of times people, you know, kind of, you know, aren't huge fans of like finished whiskeys or whatever, but I like the different complexity that sometimes with especially something like this, where you've got all these different flavors that it imparts, it just becomes a wave of different things. And it's like, it makes you kind of just guess what in the world is this, you know?
Absolutely. No, that was very, very good. Very, very, very complex.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
interesting.
So, all right. So
awesome.
So we've gone through that. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed that. So I know your battery's probably getting on critical condition. I guess before we end, do you want to again just kind of share where everybody can find you on social media?
Sure. Thank you very much. So you guys everyone who's in the chat or who was watching can find me I'm at WWE Drama King for my primary Instagram. I'm at Wrestling with Whiskey for my whiskey related Instagram. On Twitter Instagram is Drama King WWE. Twitter is WWE Drama King. Instagram, Wrestling with Whiskey, and my YouTube channel where I do some videos on all this fun stuff is also Wrestling with Whiskey. Please come check it out. Have fun with me, learn with me, most importantly, and let's chat.
Yep, let's do that. So I appreciate all your time, and we had a good night. So like I always say on my channel, it's about the journey and not the destination. Cheers.
Cheers.